So it's good to be here. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. Goal today is topic, self-service BI and the rise of active intelligence. We're going to get into that a little bit. Before we do, just kind of talk about something that, Jeff just said. On February 1st, we were acquired by Wipfli. We're looking real forward to it. My background's always been, I started my career at Arthur Andersen doing technology consulting inside of an audit and tax firm. So it's almost like going full circle for me, coming back and doing analytics inside of a larger company that happens to do audit and tax work. So it's going to be really good for everybody on our team. Our entire team went over. We joined them. We've always done Qlik and Power BI and Tableau, and they are enhancing our capabilities there. They have Qlik developers, a lot of Power BI developers, et cetera. So I think it's just going to be great for our clients. About Wipfli a little bit, since you know a little bit about us, but now that it's changed, they're a top 20 national accounting and consulting firm. They have 45 offices in 15 states. The name Wipfli is from their founder, who founded it in 1930. And, we went from a company of about 30 people to a company of now we're 3,200, so much bigger. Our offerings from our perspective are really the first bullet: data analytics, the data integration, data warehousing, data visualization, reporting, et cetera. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But Wipfli does offer a lot of other services. So if there's anything out there, if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to ask us. If we don't know, we'll ask people and find out for you. And their offices are kind of spread coast to coast. And I know we'll be adding Arkansas because we had an office there, but they haven't updated the map yet. So, and I'm pushing for them to get some more companies in North Carolina where I am. All right. So the agenda today is to talk about self-service. I'm going to demo some of the self-service features of Qlik and Power BI. Then talk about active intelligence, and then demo some of that. And then I have discussion as a bullet, but I'm hoping this is a conversation. Do not hesitate to interrupt me, throw curveballs. If I don't cover something you're interested in, please let me know, or if you clarifications, whatever. Happy to do whatever helps you guys. All right. So let's jump into self-service. So self-service, this is a long definition, but in general, just helping people explore data and generate insights on their own. Some people loop in there the idea that people should be able to create their own dashboards or maybe bring in their own data. But it's really about giving people within your organization the ability to do analysis and access insights on their own without having to always go through the IT department, let's say. So there's basically 5 areas that we think are important. Balancing governance with timely and accurate decision making. And each one of these, we kind of put in what the IT role and what the business role we think would be. So, from an IT perspective, when you're talking about governance, it's really governing that data quality. From a business perspective, it's really focusing on data insights without worrying about, the quality of the data or where it's coming from. They have a curated data source in a perfect world. The next point would be easily integrating multiple data sources. So in a perfect world, IT will source the data, vet it, approve it, and publish, data sources for people to consume. But as we know, data is changing quickly, access to systems changes quickly, and sometimes business needs access to the data before it's been curated. But in the perfect world, business will understand the connections to the data and just use what's been provided to them. The next point is quickly sharing data insights. IT will still organize and manage the data, but business really will be digging into, instead of spending their time prepping the data, spend the time analyzing and coming up with insights. Creating apps and reports on demand. From an IT perspective, trying to reduce time spent on custom apps and reports and have standard reports that people can take and start from and expand on. And for business to be able to build their own dashboards and reports without IT bottlenecks, that's really the cusp or the crux of self-service. And then lastly, being able to support a mobile enabled team. So the idea of self-service is best when it's available wherever you are. People always say, what camera do you use when I travel, right? And the best camera is the one you have with you. So I think I always use my cell phone. So it's kind of like the same with analytics. Having access to it from wherever you are is important, whether it's a browser, mobile phone, iPad, whatever. So the idea is really to strike a balance between service, self-service, and governance in the perfect self-service world. But in reality, when you think about it, IT has a lot on their plate. Many people have additional data that they need to merge into their dashboards. So we start to see this struggle between maintaining that balance between governance and self-service, and the scales really tip towards self-service, with governance being given a little less credence, just because it's important to get data and do the analysis, and perfect is the enemy of good enough in many cases. So the ideal area that we think self-service, because the perfect world isn't always perfect, is the ability to have governed data, but allow users to merge in some form of extra data that they might have in a spreadsheet or another system, so they can keep moving the ball forward. And hopefully eventually that extra data would be merged into that governed data, but doesn't always happen. But that's something to stay on top of. The idea where we see self-service challenged is this ability to add data in does create the potential to create many dashboards and reports that are duplicates of each other. So I think we'll show you through Qlik and Power BI how you can do self-service, and how you can kind of fend off the need to have multiple copies of everything, or how it all works. And then the idea of, if you're always taking governed data and merging in data, depending on the data model method you use with these tools, if you're importing the data, you could explode out and have data set redundancy. And then, although everybody starts from the same data, you might start getting single version of the truth issues, where they might all start from the same data, but when they blend additional data, now they start to get different answers. So that can be from a space issue and storage, and from different data that can cause problems. And then lastly, a lot of people equate self-service with, I want to be able to export to Excel or other tool, Google Sheets, whatever. But in our mind, that's not what self-service is meant to be. Yes, I think it's a key checkbox for just about every client and prospect we've talked to. They have to provide the ability to export to Excel. But I think through some tools we can show you with the self-service, that can fend off exporting to Excel. And there's some other features with Power BI that can really allow you to keep data governed, but allow people to use it in Excel. We'll kind of, I'm going to take a breath before I jump into my demo. And does anybody have any questions? All right, well, interrupt me if you do. So I'm going to flip over to my browser. In here, I have Power BI loaded. I'm going to refresh this because sometimes they time out. So we'll just make sure they're all good. Now, what I'm going to show you first is self-service. So the idea of people being able to access reports and dashboards and make changes to them, or create whole new dashboards based on data. So in Power BI, what you're looking at is the hub experience. This is my home page. It's going to show me apps I've had used to, any recent apps I've been to. I have some that I've flagged as favorites. I do want to talk a little bit about terminology. What I'm going to show you first is a Power BI report. Then I'm going to show you a Power BI dashboard, and then I'm going to show you a ClickSense dashboard. In those worlds, report in Power BI equals dashboard in ClickSense, and a dashboard in Power BI equates more to the hub in ClickSense. And you'll kind of see that, and I'll call it out as we go in. Let's jump into a Power BI report. This has the idea that I have many different pages down the left-hand side, different things. And I can come in here, filter down data. I can pick things just like Microsoft in Excel. I can use my control click to multi-select. I've built out a bunch of dashboards and pages, or built a report with many pages, get my terminology right. Now, as a self-service person, this is great. I can come over here and I can play with the filters and use it, but maybe I don't like the charts and graphs. So from a self-service perspective, I want to be able to change these. So if you have permissions in Power BI, and permissions are managed at the workspace level. So if I'm in many different workspaces, right now I'm in a BI group, and I have the right to, I can edit dashboards. And I can come in here, and as soon as I do that, all my pages that were down my left-hand side get thrown along the bottom. And then I can come in and actually make complete changes to this. I could change what fields are in here. So over on the side, I can come in and say, okay, I got sales rep. I could remove that field if I wanted to. But my changes that I make to this, because I am able to edit, affects it for everyone. So I'm changing this for anybody who uses this dashboard. So what happens a lot of time is people come in and add pages and not change the existing pages, but sometimes people break things and take away fields that other people wanted. So not always a great self-service mechanism. Another way to do this is to allow people to create their own reports. So on my homepage, I can allow people to create a new report. Now, when I do that, there's a couple different ways. I can start and copy paste data in. I can download the desktop application and do my application report development in a desktop application, which is kind of the primary way people do it in Power BI. Or if I'm an end user and there's a data set that's already been built for me, I can just pick a published data set. And this is kind of our favorite because, for example, I was just in that Power BI dashboard or report called Consumer Goods Demo. There's a related data set underneath it. I can create a whole new report by selecting that data set and hitting create. And now I have a blank report, but all the dimensions and measures that I want that were in the data in that other dashboard are now available to me. I've not duplicated the data, but from a self-service perspective, I can come in here, I could add a chart. I could then come down to customers, add the customer, maybe go to my measures that are preset, pick sales, and then boom, I have a dashboard chart built. And I can build out my own little dashboard. I can then, save this, and I'm going to give it, Greg's dashboard. And now I can, favorite that. And now when I go to my home area, now I have Greg's dashboard. It's in the BI group as well, because based on that same data set that this report is built on. So that kind of gives me that ability to create my own self-service on top of prepared existing data set. So that's a nice way to do that kind of thing. I'm going to jump over to Qlik and kind of show you the equivalent. Qlik, you have a landing page called your hub, kind of the equivalent of the Power BI homepage. In here, normally this would be minimized once I've been in here enough, but it's kind of a help area. I'm going to minimize that. And then I can pin charts from any of my Qlik dashboards, kind of like a Power BI report. I can pin entire apps into what these call different containers. I created Greg's favorite container. And then I'm going to open the app. And I think that This is the main area that I see it's different and something that sets the two products apart from each other. When I come into the consumer goods demo, and it's kind of fun because I tried to build out the exactly same dashboard in both tools. So here is the Qlik version. If I come back in here, here is the same sheet page in Power BI, sheet in Qlik Sense with the same kind of visuals. Here it works a little bit different. With all my sheets, I have public sheets, community sheets, a published by me area, and a my sheet. So where in Power BI, I had to be an admin and edit and change things and have the ability to change everything, that would be the equivalent of being able to change the public sheets. Qlik Sense allows you to segment capabilities and let people create new sheets or change sheets without having to create that new app like I did before or give them full edit rights. So in this situation, maybe I'm on a sheet like this. I can say duplicate it. It's then I'm going to name it, Greg's shipment analysis. And I'm done editing. Now it's down here, Greg's shipment analysis under the my sheet area. I'm still connected to the same data. So it's kind of like that report in Power BI I showed you. I'm sharing the same data set. I've created my own sheet instead of in a separate report within the same dashboard. But now I can also publish that and make it available to others. So now it shows up in Greg's shipment analysis under published by me. Everybody else would see it under this community area. So I think the key difference between Qlik Sense and Power BI is having global ability to edit or creating a new report, or kind of two ways. Qlik Sense is you can have one application on top of a set of data, and then you can have private sheets, published by me sheets, and community areas, and no one can change these public sheets except the actual developer. And the nice thing is when that new developer says, oh, I'd like to make another public, when they publish that application, none of these are overwritten. The community published by me and my sheets are kind of stored separately and stay attached and don't get overwritten when someone publishes. That's a little different on the Power BI side. If someone was to say, I'm going to download this file and work on it in Power BI desktop, then I went into the website and made some changes, and then someone from the Power BI desktop republished over this, I would lose my work. So that's another reason why a lot of people create their own new reports in Power BI connected to the data set, but separate so they don't ever lose work. Any questions?
I'm curious, if I may.
Absolutely.
Why? Well, let me back up a little bit. We are employing a tool called Spotfire. It's a TIBCO business intelligence platform, and one of the differentiators that I'm sort of coming to terms with listening to you in this presentation is in the Spotfire model, we have the opportunity to actually purchase a specific type of license and have that license be able to mitigate and control who actually can develop, who actually has access, who has read-write access, so on and so forth. And I think what that's done for us is, when we give someone author rights, that individual now has full-blown control to essentially create his or her entire model from top to bottom. And so I'm just curious, do these tools provide that kind of control at the licensing level?
Yes. So okay. I'll touch on licensing. Power BI, by default, you have to have a minimum of a pro user to be able to access it. A pro user can then be limited based on their permissions in a workspace whether they can just use a dashboard or if they actually get this edit button here.
Mhm.
There's another way, and I'll mention it. I wasn't planning to cover it today because it's a whole separate conversation. You can publish Power BI reports into what's called an app, and then you can share apps out. You see this link on the side for apps.
Mhm.
That's where you can take many reports and publish them out into a consumable app and then limit what people can do. There's additional permissions you can do there.
Mhm.
But at a minimum, a pro license can be an author or just a consumer. From there, for Power BI, then you can go premium, and you can make premium per user or premium where you allocate premium to different workspaces, and that gives you more capabilities. And I'll cover that in the active intelligence area, some of those differences. But yes, there's different licensing on Power BI. On Qlik, they basically have two license types: a professional and an analyzer. And a professional sounds like it would line up. It's kind of like the pro on Power BI. You can do anything. You
Mhm.
limit them by what they can do within the spaces where you store apps. An analyzer can use dashboards, but this whole idea of duplicating, creating new sheets, like I could create new sheet, an analyzer user cannot do that. So they're not, in Spotfire's terminology, they're not an author.
Got it. Okay.
Greg,
And then
this
both,
is Julie.
yeah.
Oops, sorry.
Okay.
This is Julie. In past conversations, I may have mentioned, and it may not be something to go into detail right now, but an interest in trying to know what resources or what are best recommended out there for training of how to utilize. We happen to be Power BI, and helping those who are not the technical gurus who are in there creating the data sets, how to train them to utilize the skills that you were even just clicking through quickly within the Power BI. Is there a best resource to go to try to find that training?
There are a host of options here. I've seen fantastic YouTube videos that go through that. I've seen, structured classroom training that you can go to, and we have a list I can provide as a follow-up. What we find is most useful is having whoever developed the application or one of the power users who uses it record short videos on how to use apps or how to use some of your data sets, and then making those available through SharePoint internally, or you can add a button in Power BI. There's all sorts of controls you can add. You can add a button or embed a video on one of these pages. There's a YouTube player. So there's lots of ways to kind of put it where the user is and not say, oh, now where do I go get help to do something?
Okay, great.
Yep. All right. So I don't think it's I have to address the elephant in the room is exporting to Excel. So I'm going to start from I'm going to start on the ClickSense side. So every single chart can be downloaded and you can dump data out. So these exports are they're getting better and better to now start exporting formats. So here it is over here. I took this chart. Obviously the little mini chart trends didn't come across. You can start to see colors coming across. More and more of the formatting is now coming across with export from Qlik. You curate it, and a lot of our clients create entire sheets, and you tend to see, as we get further along, more reporting sheets where people can dump this out. However, once you download that data, you've lost all governance. So Power BI can also export. So I could go to any of these other sheets, get a table of data, and right here, I can export the data. Current layout, summarized, whatever I want to do. And that, just like ClickSense, is going to give you the data unformatted in most cases, but available to do everything else. Well, the biggest use case we see people do is they want to be able to analyze in Excel. they want to create pivot tables. So they dump this data out, they throw it into a data tab, and then they start, creating other tabs to do other things off of that data. VLOOKUPs are often a favorite. One of the things that I like, and this is natively available in Power BI, there's an add-on for ClickSense that can do very similar things. But if you look here, there's this Analyze in Excel option. And what it's going to do is create an Excel file for me, consumer goods demo. When I open that, it's creating, and because I came off the internet, I got to click enable and enable a couple times. But underneath that Power BI report, and you remember when I created that new report with a new sheet and added a bar chart, all those measures and dimensions I could pick, that's now available to me here. So all those measures and dimensions. Now this data is not in Excel, but just like I created, I took the customer field and then I went up to the measure and I grabbed sales. I now have sales by customer. And if I go look at the Power BI design and I look at the data source, it might be tiny, but it's actually, the data is stored out in Power BI. It's doing an API call to get access to that raw data set. So it's not stored in Excel. This is just a view into that Power BI data. And that is tremendously powerful. So now next time I open this file, it's going to reconnect. In fact, I can choose to manually refresh it or set it to be automatic. You get those choices when you do this. Refresh every so many minutes, refresh data when opening. That's what most people do. Or if it's a ton of data, you can hit refresh when you want to. But the idea here is next time I open this, could be refreshed with new data from that Power BI data set out in the cloud. So that governed data source. We have a couple clients where they're heavy Tableau users. They're implementing Power BI because people there said, don't touch our Tableau, but they're implementing Power BI from this ability just to do this Analyze Excel. Then they're hoping to gain traction and eventually say, well, I don't want to pay for both Tableau and Power BI. Can we start to do more of the visualization side as well in Power BI? So it's a little bit of a skunkworks project for this client. Has anybody used this before? Well, hopefully it's something new that you might not have known that was there.
This is really cool, Greg. Sorry to just pop in, but I did not know that this was here, and we were actually just talking about something like this yesterday. So
yeah, it makes now it definitely means you have to build out a Power BI data model.
Yeah.
You could also build out and then when you build a Power BI data model, you're building a SQL Server analysis cube, and basically because it's the same thing. It's like a miniature engine of SaaS. So in this situation, you could also point this stuff at an SSAS cube, but this is where that's a higher skill set for your users. Whoever's building those measures, dimensions, and what's available here is probably a different skill set than the people who are probably going to want to build the pivot tables.
And you said that there was an add-in for the same functionality within Qlik?
Yes, it's called Analytics Gate. It works a little bit differently. What it does is it gives you access to all of the ClickSense data model right from Excel. And you can do filtering and everything right here and build out pivot tables. You can even basically do the equivalent of VLOOKUPs back into Qlik cell by cell. So if you really want to do a very customized financial statement, it's a great use case. Cool. It can do all sorts of reporting, but that's something we've seen very nice, where I'm going to build out very enhanced reports where I want this piece of data to come from Qlik.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was real intriguing last session with David Fields was, talking about, cost containment and in-memory and different things like that. If you get a bunch of spreadsheets out there like this that upon opening automatically, suck down the data from the cloud, and you had 100 people in your organization with this capability, you're going to be in a cost containment issue, I would think. So any thoughts on, comparing, having this functionality available and understanding what David was talking to us last time about, trying to contain costs by pulling the data once, et cetera?
Yes. So I think he was more talking about getting data into like a Power BI or something like that, but it does hold true here. You will have data going back and forth between Excel
Right.
and your Power BI data model.
Right.
So as you design that, you're going to have to think about, if you have 100 users refreshing that, you possibly could have some data charges coming out because you're pulling data out of, Azure. Putting data into Azure is free-ish. Pulling it out, there
Right.
can be some data charges.
Yeah. And that's probably a crazy example of 100, but something people should think about probably.
Well, the good thing is you're not downloading all of the data. You're only downloading what
Right.
you're visualizing in the pivot table, because it's sending basically a query and getting a result set, versus if you were downloading the data, you probably would be downloading millions of rows potentially.
Yeah, that's a
instead
good
of
point.
just the summarized data.
That's good. And the other thing, I think from a data governance point of view, this is a great add-in, because when
Right.
you mentioned the earlier example, if you have the rights and you can change this dashboard, it changes it for everybody. Well, that's when your data governance goes out the window, obviously, unless you have absolute control over who could do that. But this gives you a very nice governance perspective, I feel.
The hard part for people is probably understanding the lineage, or trusting some of the data. Because as you get into self-service, they're like, okay, well, where did you get that sales number from? So there's some other features that both products have that's pretty nice. If I am in a report in Power BI, and I can go up here and I can look at this open lineage view. And it's going to throw another tab up in my browser. This one's pretty simplistic. Since we moved companies and had moved Power BI tenants, I haven't got all my demos over here, so I apologize. But in this situation, I have a whole bunch of text files available through a Power BI data gateway, feeding this report, this data set, which feeds my report, which feeds my dashboard. On the Qlik side, very similarly, I can right-click on, sorry, not right-click, these little three dots when I'm in the hub, and I can go to impact analysis. It's going to look very similar. This is all those same files getting consumed by my dashboard. But then I also have other dashboards that have row and column level security applied that are pulling from this. So I get to see the flow of data from my source systems into my dashboard. And then if it continue on into other dashboards and you're daisy chaining things, or you do more of an extract, a transform, and load in either Power BI or Qlik, this lineage will definitely show you, give your users some more capabilities here. Right now, this is at the table level in Qlik. They're going down to the field level. I could even go look at a data set just to kind of figure out where it's coming from. I can profile the data. So a user can kind of get comfortable with, hey, where did the data come that built this dashboard? And maybe answer some of the questions that otherwise they would have to call IT about. And Power BI is definitely also building out a lot more lineage. So
That's nice.
I think those are key features. As you want to empower users, they really need to understand what's going on. From our perspective, as we build dashboards for people, we try to, I'll use the example of, we have one client that is on an acquisition spree. They're currently consolidating 9 ERPs into dashboards. So we'll take the customers from one, or for all 9, and merge it into a master customer file. We'll take the item master from all 9 and merge it into one item master. And we're trying to create that layer of one version, kind of like a data warehouse in Qlik or in Power BI or in an actual data warehouse, or cloud warehouse, whatever. And then you try to boil it down to where everything's English language and usable for the user. So let me switch back to my PowerPoint. That brings up the idea of letting people pull data in. What I showed you so far was just self-service creating visualizations. All these tools with authoring rights, pro license on either platform, allow people to start from scratch and just pull data from source systems. What we really want to avoid is that, because as people move to Snowflake or Azure Synapse, those are CPU driven cost animals. The more you let people hit those raw data sources and just have them use it themselves and do whatever they want, your costs are going to skyrocket. So both from a governance perspective, we want to avoid this idea that just say, here's Power BI, you can figure it out, or here's Qlik, you can connect read-only into all these data sources. Good luck, have fun, go to town. We rather would see is something more where someone's creating that governed data layer. It doesn't have to be a data warehouse. It could just be data marts where you start, or just somewhere you're corralling and cleansing the data a little bit instead of going back to your source systems, and then layer your dashboards on top of that. But then what we're really seeing is the need for this, where yes, we've governed it. Now, how do we work and show people how to augment it and bring in that one spreadsheet of additional data and merge it into all that governed data? So there's many different kinds of ways to get data into the Qliks, the Power BIs, the Tableaus of the world, or whatever. Just talking about Power BI and Qlik today, by default, you're going to see most people go with the import approach. They start with Power BI, they just connect, they import the data, they build their data model. They might do it well, they might do it so they're getting bad answers. You just don't know. Same on the Qlik side. So we've seen the first approach when people buy these tools is give the end user the ability to import data and they go to town. Then what we start to see is, hey, on the Power BI side, I'm hitting the wall on space I'm allowed under a pro license, which is 1 gigabyte per dashboard or data set. So they start doing direct query where they're live connecting to data sources, and they start seeing usability of their dashboards decline because response time just isn't there. Because you throw 12 visualizations onto a page in Power BI, and all of a sudden when someone launches that, that's at least 12 queries to get data. And if everyone's at 1 second, which doesn't sound bad, and now they're waiting 12 seconds. So it starts to slow things down. Or they can do live query in Power BI back to an SSAS. Or like I showed you, you can connect to an existing Power BI data set. And that's better because then you're creating a report on top of a governed data source. If it's a Power BI data set, it's right there. So it's really fast. If it's SSAS, hopefully you're running Azure Analysis Services, or your gateway and your internet connection on-prem are really fast. But this new thing they introduced in Power BI is called composite models. And this gets really exciting. This is the ability to take, say, a connection to an existing Power BI data set or to an SSAS cube. And instead of being a live query, it converts it to a direct query. But then I can import additional data and link it into the data model. So now I've got the best of both worlds. I got governed data and imported data linked together in the same data model. And I can now build visualizations on top of that. So you're not giving up all governance, you're giving up a little bit. So that's a lot easier than just saying, here's access to all of it. On the Qlik side, import data is their default go-to. I could talk to you all about in-memory, how in-memory and importing in Power BI and importing data in Qlik is probably the fastest, but you're going to hit situations where size of data outpaces the benefit of importing. But there's many different ways to handle it. I talked about the Power BI ones. On the Qlik one, you can build out data models just like in Power BI, create an application that basically starts with that, and then you can import additional data. So you have a governed data model load with your ability to import. You can also create on-demand application generation where you have a parent-child relationship and you say, here, I want to filter this data, and then it builds out a whole new dashboard template with just that subset of data. So, and then lastly, both have this concept of hybrid data delivery, where as we talk and go into active intelligence here in a minute, we really are focused on the idea of getting data in there in real time. All right. I already kind of talked to this a little bit. If you have questions, you'll get a copy of this afterwards. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to keep going a little faster. So active intelligence. When we talk about active intelligence, the idea here is trying to, historically, people use Power BI to do look-back analysis. They use Qlik to do look-back analysis, more historically focused. It was designed to inform and not compel action. The idea of active intelligence is the idea of allowing people to be reactive versus proactive, to push alerting and subscriptions to people so they can react to it from their inbox, because we all know that's where we all live. And it's designed to trigger immediate actions. And it's going to be paired with, in some instances, real-time data, because if you're on the shop floor and you want active intelligence that something's going wrong, that has to be real-time data. So, but that's not always a requirement. So as you talk about from passive to active, we've talked about you kind of go from informing the decision to going beyond the dashboard to triggering action. The key things that are here are like in-memory analytics makes it fast for people to do analysis of data. People use things that are responsive. Ability to add collaboration and notes. A lot of these tools allow commenting or integration to Teams or Slack so that you can put comments and discussions where people live all the time. You can embed this into other systems. So it's really important to think about, do they have to go to Power BI? Do they have to go to Qlik? Or can I embed Power BI in Teams, for example? Yes, you can. Just a quick answer. Can I embed Qlik in Teams? Yes, you can. You can do that as well. So, or do I, if you're heavy Salesforce users, do you want to have Power BI and Qlik available right inside Salesforce instead of having to make them go somewhere else? And then beyond the dashboard, thinking about mobility, being able to search and do conversational analytics, intelligent alerting, as well as application automation, and triggering other things in other systems. And we touched on real time. Any questions? I'm going to go ahead and I had a slide to go over each of these, talking about collaboration and notes, and we'll send that as a follow-up. I thought it might just be best to kind of show you a couple things about active that I think are really neat and usable. So I'm going to jump back over to my demo. I showed you this Power BI report. People can subscribe and have subscriptions. And when it will show up in their inbox like this. So I can have a copy of that dashboard with a picture sent to me on a schedule multiple times a day, kind of like any calendar option. You have tons of choices on when this gets sent to you. I can do the same thing from the Qlik side, and it would look more like this one, where I get a PDF that has a dashboard that's sent out on a schedule, or I can have it take me right back into the app, and it's going to take me right to, if I'm not timed out, it would take me right back to here. And to this sheet. And just like Power BI, I can subscribe to this sheet. I can set up date and time and all that kind of stuff right through here. The other area that's really powerful is alerting. Within Qlik, on any chart, you can set up an alert. So I've set up one for anytime sales dips below 550 million. I can add measures to this alert. Any kind of calculation I can do in Qlik, I can do that. I can then have it do a condition on that measure, less than 50 million. Then I can schedule it anytime the date is changed, daily, weekly, monthly. And that's going to allow me to have an alert sent out anytime this dashboard is refreshed, when something, any kind of calculation I want to do would result in a true or false, that the alert should fire. Power BI has that same capability. It's a little more limited. I have to do it from what's called a dashboard. So when you're in a Power BI report, you can, anytime you hover over a chart, you see this little push pin, and I can pin that visual to a dashboard. So when I'm in this dashboard, anything I've pinned in any reports, I can kind of lay out. And certain types of visualizations, like a KPI like this, has the ability to have alerts. And not every single chart supports it. There's like 3 different chart types that do. But then I can say, hey, when the current sales is above 50 million, send me an email. So that's, we think, very useful for people. So that's kind of alerting and subscriptions.
Nice.
The last thing I'll cover, there's so much I could cover today, and always happy to have conversations, is a new thing that's come out in both platforms that you might have heard about. When I set up this alert in Power BI, you're going to see this little, it's not obvious, use Power BI Automate to trigger additional actions. Well, Power Automate is part of the Power Platform for Qlik. It's basically a low-code, no-code kind of solution. Allows you to cause things to happen. So I could create, like on a data refresh, if a goal fails, I could kick off something. Well, Power BI or Power Automate has connections out to many different things. I could send a Teams message. I could update Excel. I could cause some sort of other flow that does something in Salesforce. This idea that you've got all this analysis going on in Power BI, and you can decide to alert yourself on different things. What if you could then have some sort of other action be caused in another system? Maybe something's wrong. You want to tell a salesperson through Slack that they should check on an opportunity. Maybe something happens on the shop floor. You want to tell them that they're running that machine too slowly. Or, hey, something reload failed. Go cause it to a JIRA ticket to be created so someone has a to-do to fix it. That same kind of logic is available in Qlik. It's called application automation. It's a direct, they bought Blender.io a couple years ago, or last year, and this idea of automations. So I can do all sorts of things. I'm just going to pick this. They have templates available just like Power BI. I'm going to use this. And basically, it's a no-code solution where you can say start, go get some values, and send a Teams message. That's a simple one. But they have connectors off to all sorts of things. Dropbox, Salesforce, Google BigQuery, MailChimp, JIRA. So think about anything that you could see as some sort of data item in a Qlik dashboard can cause a litany of other things to happen. And this is all, both the Power Automate and application automation are leveraging web-based APIs that other vendors have made available. So, and you don't have to know how to code. You just have to know, like for Teams, pick a team, You could go look for one, find a team. So it's very, very low code. So there are plenty of other things that kind of around active intelligence. Things that if you have an interest in, you can ask English language questions. You can have both Qlik and Power BI able to prompt you and recommend things. So this whole self-service taken on steroids is kind of like if I wanted to ask a question and say, what was sales by product? And it's just going to automatically recommend to me stuff. So both Qlik and Power BI, if I was in a dashboard and I'm on this, let's go back to my favorites. I can also get insights here too, and it's going to recommend other charts and stuff that I might want to pin to my dashboard. So very neat stuff that's coming that takes a lot of knowledge that users have to know how to do things, because it's just recommending charts that you can then add to your sheets. So pretty neat, and it can teach them how to do stuff.
Good. We should get down to final questions here. We're getting close to time, but Greg, I tell you, I think I can speak for the group that you showing us this type functionality and doing compare and contrast with a couple different tools is fantastic. And we appreciate all your insights for sure.
Yeah,
Any
I
final
need
thoughts from
another
anybody?
hour. Can we just keep going?
I know. Any final thoughts from any of the execs on the call? I'd love to.
Yeah, sure. We
Yeah.
don't necessarily need you, Jeff, to be thanking Greg on our behalf. We're all big boys and girls.
Okay, Ed. I was just trying to save time, buddy.
I know. That's pretty impressive, to be honest. Yeah, it's living in a BI world. We've expanded some of the way we're using the tool. One of the things we stumbled upon real quickly was a spatial analysis, where it actually governs the amount of leased footprint we maintain to store inventory, and to make sure that we're never in a position where too much inventory is shipping in against inventory shipping out, so that we don't end up exhausting our spatial capacity. So it was just something out of left field. Got asked about it and handed it over to the guys and gals, and the next thing I know, we had this incredible tool that we're able to use. So, but what you've shown today has been awfully impressive, and it's ringing a lot of bells for me in terms of things that we collectively, the team, might see some interest in. So, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thought Greg, you mentioned a few things that are less than desirable behaviors when you implement these self-service systems. But what would you say that besides those behaviors and those redundancies and things like that that might result from use, what would you say is the biggest thing that tends to hold back value from these systems that is based on, maybe not enough training up front, or some other flaw in how it's rolled out that can be corrected?
I'd say the two things that I think impact adoption the most are data governance, which encompasses the idea of field definitions and understanding the data and coming to agreement as to what the definitions of data are. I mean, I've been in a meeting where 6 people had a different formula for the same thing. They thought they were all doing the same way. The other side of it is that publishing the dashboard or the report is not, you're not done. It's the idea of training the user, having, ongoing feedback loop. What are they using? What aren't they using? Why? Are they still exporting to Excel? Because all these systems can track it. And saying, because people go back to their old habits really quickly if they can't get what they want out of the system they're using. So it's really about maintaining adoption, training, and making sure that you react and keep iterating the dashboards regularly to keep them useful for people.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Greg, so much. And thanks everyone for taking the time. And we'll be talking soon on hopefully another event. We'll be in touch. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.